and welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Here's a look at what's lined up for you on the show tonight. Our cover story tonight is about a fresh twist in the Russia-Ukraine war, one that comes with far-reaching implications. Ukraine has struck Moscow. You heard that right. In fact, there were drone strikes in the heart of the Russian capital. As the war drags on for 15 months, is this the beginning of a fresh turn of events? And how is Russia responding to the latest developments? Has Kiev breached Moscow's red line, and is the war about to get more dangerous? Where really are things headed from here onwards? We piece together the developments and get you the bigger picture. Also on the show for you tonight, we make you meet an alleged Russian spy whale. You heard that right. A whale apparently spying for Russia has resurfaced. Where has this happened? What is the story? We tell you. China's mountain of troubles is growing bigger. Wuhan is running out of cash. How have things reached this point? Have the Himalayas turned into a garbage dump? We tell you what conservationists are saying. This is a Gravitas special report. Do you like washing your clothes? How often do you do that? And what if we tell you there are some who really don't want to wash their clothes? We tell you all about the no-wash movement. The war in Ukraine is turning more dangerous, and it's no longer confined to Ukrainian territory. It has now also reached the Russian capital. In fact, earlier this morning, there was a large-scale drone attack on Moscow. It caused minor damage to several residential buildings. Remember, this is the second such attack on the Russian capital. A few weeks back, Ukraine allegedly sent drones over the Kremlin. And a few weeks on, there has been another drone attack. The images are striking. They show damaged buildings in the affluent southwestern part of Moscow. Reports say one drone landed near the city center, the other crashed close to a popular park. And the visuals also show broken windows and a blackened facade as anxious residents try to call their loved ones on their cell phones.
I'm glad, of course, that it didn't hit our house, but it was quite close by. Well, it's logical. It's to be expected. That's all I can say.
I live on the second floor of the building across the street, building number 32. In the morning around 4:15 a.m., I had a look already. There was a deafening bang, as if a huge bolt of lightning had struck somewhere near. I thought this was caused by an air defense system going off because I live in the area where that can happen. I know how it sounds. I came out to have a look. There were lots of emergency services on site, and you could see that the top of the building was damaged. Turns out, it was not the air defenses. This meant it was something more serious. Something more interesting.
We have a building site here where work goes on 24 hours a day. People working the night shift say that at around 4 a.m. there was a bang so loud that people sleeping nearby almost fell out of their beds. It was a very loud explosion. A bang, as they say.
And this is unprecedented, by the way. It marks a new inflection point in this conflict and a major psychological blow to the Kremlin. Remember, when the war started last year, the Kremlin had said that the conflict would never threaten the lives of ordinary Russians. And guess what? Now it is. According to Moscow's mayor, Sergei Sobyanin, at least 2 people were injured in the attack. He says there were a total of 8 drones and all 8 were taken down. if they had not been intercepted, the damage would have been much more severe. Nonetheless, the fact that the drones reached the Russian capital is in itself a serious escalation, so much so that the Russian Defense Ministry is calling this a terror attack. Let me just quote the exact statement for you. This morning, the Kiev regime launched a terrorist drone attack on targets in the city of Moscow. 3 of them were suppressed by electronic warfare, lost control, and deviated from their intended targets. Another 5 drones were shot down by the surface-to-air missile system in the Moscow region. This was Moscow's side of the story, of course. What about the Ukrainian side? What are they saying? Well, they are feigning ignorance and they have denied carrying out the strikes. They say they have no idea who was behind this. And the timing does not help the case. Just 24 hours before these strikes, there was a daytime attack on the Ukrainian capital. The Russians fired a barrage of missiles, sending panicked residents running for shelter. 1 person died, several others were injured. Were the drone strikes on Moscow in response to this attack? Was it a tit-for-tat move? Well, it certainly seems like that. The Ukrainians may deny this, but the Russians, frankly, don't care much about their denial. They are in no mood to let this attack go unanswered, more so because of the weapons that were used. You see, the drones that landed in Moscow, who gave them to Ukraine is the question. Kiev will say the Turks, but Moscow believes they were given by the NATO, most probably America. And so far, it has not revealed the details of the drones. But if they are indeed American in origin, then matters are set to get worse because this violates a red line, a line set up by America saying its weapons should not be used beyond the borders of Ukraine. And they should only be used to defend Ukraine and not attack Russia. But this line has now gone for a toss, it seems. For the Russians, this is equivalent to America becoming an effective party in this war, something they have warned against on multiple occasions. And they are mighty upset. Have a look at the statement that the Russian defense minister made. Speaking to reporters about this attack, he took direct aim at the NATO, saying that NATO weapons are being used to perpetuate terror in Russia. You have to watch this.
Military support to Ukraine merely drags military activities out further, but cannot affect the outcome of the special military operations. Using NATO weapons, those in power in Kyiv continue to carry out strikes against social facilities and perpetrate terrorist acts against Russian civilians. Our military forces are firm in their response to the actions of the Ukrainian militants.
So what happens now? The West is certainly uneasy about what lies ahead. Ukraine has struck the heart of Moscow. How can there not be a reaction? And staying with the Russia-Ukraine war, we have said this many times in the past. This war is not just a military battle. It is also a battle of intelligence. Spies on both sides are trying their best to change the course of this conflict. And one such alleged Russian spy was apparently spotted off Sweden's coast. The only thing is that this spy is not a human being, it is a Beluga whale. That's right. The Swedish media saying this whale has been conducting espionage for the Russians. And what makes them say that? Our next report tells you.
What comes to your mind when you hear the word spy? James Bond, Ethan Hunt, or perhaps a ruggedly gentleman in a crisp suit? What you may not picture is a marine animal with a thick layer of blubber and a pair of pectoral flippers. Meet Vladimir, a beluga whale, and apparently a Russian spy. On Sunday, it was spotted off Sweden's southwestern coast. What was it doing there? No one knows. And how do they know it's Russian? Well, when the whale first appeared in 2019, It had a harness attached to its head, which was meant to mount a camera. When removed, the harness had the words "Equipment St. Petersburg." Since then, it has been speculated that the Beluga is a Russian spy. And it is not the first of its kind. The Russian Navy has been training belugas to conduct military operations for decades. Why just Russia? Countries around the world have used sea animals for espionage. The Ukrainian Navy has been doing this for decades, training killer dolphins with knives and pistols attached to their heads. In 2013, some of them are said to have escaped in search of love. The CIA, too, has a history of using highly trained dolphins as spies. In 2005, when Hurricane Katrina hit America, these pinpoint spies went missing in the Gulf of Mexico. Iran, too, has an entire fleet of killer dolphins at its disposal, specially trained to track enemy ships in the Persian Gulf. And in January last year, Hamas said that one of its naval commandos was attacked by a killer Zionist dolphin. Their words. They released this video, claiming that the dolphin was an operative of the Israeli Defense Forces, or IDF. To put it simply, marine animals have a long history of military use. In fact, their unsuspecting nature makes them an even more lethal tool than their human counterparts. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Last night on the show, we told you how the stage is being set for a major upgrade in India's strategic relations with the United States. We told you how a powerful congressional committee in America has recommended that India should be included in NATO Plus. Also how India could seal a deal for the highly prized F-16 during the Indian Prime Minister's visit to Washington next month. And as the speculation garners more steam, we decided to put these questions before someone with the know-how of this matter, Eric Garcetti, the new US ambassador to India. My colleague Bhairavi Singh interacted with him in New Delhi this afternoon, and she asked him about the plans to include India in the NATO Plus grouping, also whether there will be a deal on the F-16 jets. And this is what he told her.
Well, there are also some talks about the NATO Plus, India joining the NATO Plus. Does that also mean that India will be getting F-16s? Can you throw some more light on this?
You know, we have deepened our defense cooperation, unimaginable 30 years ago, 40 years ago, leaning in further with India than sometimes we have with some of our closest allies, co-production, being able to sell important systems to make sure that India is safe. So I think anything is on the table. It's really up to India to decide what makes best sense for India. But I know for one thing, whether it's the Quad or now the Indo-Pacific, we are linked together. The eastern edge is the United States. The western edge is here in India, of a common region where we want freedoms respected, we want to make sure that we are safe, and that peace, prosperity, our planet, and our people are all promoted.
Our next story is heart-wrenching. You might have come across a video already. It has been making rounds on social media since Monday. And in case you haven't, please brace yourself because the visuals are disturbing to say the least. A 16-year-old girl in India's capital was stabbed to death. Not once or twice, but about 20 times. Who was capable of such a heinous crime? A 20-year-old man, none other than her own boyfriend. Sahil Khan, he stabbed the victim on her chest, arms, shoulders and head. He was in a monstrous frenzy, not caring where his knife landed. And why did he do this? Because the minor wanted to end her relationship with him, and unhappy with her decision, first he stabbed her, then he hit her with a concrete slab 6 to 7 times. And even after walking away, he came back to hit her a few times more. The girl's skull was ruptured. She had more than 34 wounds on her body. The details are gory. Still, I want you to hear them. You know why? because those who actually saw this happening did not seem to care much. The incident took place out in the open. He killed the minor at a busy street in Delhi's Shabad Dairy area. Dozens of people milled by, they witnessed the incident, but nobody did anything, save for one man who tried to help but gave up soon enough. My question here is, what justifies this absolute apathy? The fact is, there was one murderer and dozens of people passing by. He was clearly outnumbered. Even if a handful of people had come together and intervened, they could have saved a life. But they did not. The girl was unconscious. Nobody even bothered to check on her. Sahil Khan fled to his aunt's place in Uttar Pradesh, but he was tracked down and is in police custody now. He has reportedly confessed to the crime, showing no remorse for what he did. Meanwhile, the minor's family is mourning their loss. Her mother has called for death penalty for the accused. Listen in to what she said.
I want death penalty for him. He must die the way my daughter died.
Now, I really hope you don't have to go through anything like this. But just for a minute, imagine if it was your daughter or your sister, your friend or someone you know. You would want someone to help her, wouldn't you? How would you feel if people who could have easily stopped and perhaps saved her simply walked by? The harsh reality is this, that this wasn't the first time this happened, and unfortunately, neither will this be the last. In February, another 16-year-old was attacked by a 47-year-old man. He stabbed her in the neck and then dragged her by hair in the middle of a road in the Indian state of Chhattisgarh. She ultimately collapsed on the road. She simply refused that man's proposal to marry him. I hope you realize that we are talking about a minor here. She was badly wounded, was admitted to a hospital in a critical condition. And something similar happened on the roads of Tamil Nadu's Vellore. The victim used to work at a private shoe company. She was on her way home when her own husband attacked her. After hitting her, the husband began stabbing her as his wife tried to defend herself. He stabbed her 7 times before finally walking away. In the year 2021, a 29-year-old pregnant woman was shot by her husband. This was in Delhi's Nizamuddin area in broad daylight. She was 8 months pregnant. She had recently been granted, was granted a bail. She was sitting outside her house when her husband came and shot her 4 times. The CCTV clip of the incident went viral on social media. And that same year, another such gruesome video surfaced on the internet. 40-year-old stabbed to death by her husband in Delhi's Rohini area. The incident happened at a busy local marketplace in broad daylight. Shoppers went about their business. Others were seen recording videos on their mobile phones. Do you see what such incidents have in common? Public places with dozens of people, yet nobody did anything. They simply stood and watched or ran away. Some even had the audacity to pull out their phones and record the horror unfolding in front of them. This is what things have come down to. This is the kind of society that we are living in today. The absolute apathy that exists. I hope you think about this. Let's shift focus to China for now. The city of Wuhan there is running out of cash. You heard that right. In an extremely rare move, the city has demanded hundreds of companies to repay their debt. The Finance Bureau says 259 companies owe it over $14 million. State and private companies, government departments and think tanks are the debtors that Wuhan plans to confront. The Finance Bureau said it was unsuccessful. So what is the alternate plan of action? Authorities are rewarding anyone who gets data on the debtor's financial assets. Reports say that China's outstanding debt stood at over $18 trillion last year, out of which nearly $10 trillion was hidden debt. And what is hidden debt? It's basically any kind of debt that does not show up on the balance sheets. The debt is issued through bonds, which are supposed to finance local governments. And what about the banks? How will this impact them? Experts say smaller city and rural banks are especially vulnerable because of their deep relationship with the local government. In fact, things are so bad that several cities have slashed medical benefits for seniors, and this has sparked massive protests. Things have gotten worse in other parts of the country. Reduced wages, slashed transportation services, reduced fuel subsidies. This is what the people on the ground have to face as the authorities struggle to justify the cause. And what caused the crisis? It all began in 2019 when Wuhan, the epicenter of the Wuhan virus pandemic, started imposing frequent lockdowns, mass testings, and set up several quarantine centers. China's zero COVID campaign exhausted the budgets of many cities. The government spent billions of dollars on COVID-19 restrictions. Experts say that China is facing an economic minefield of its own making. Although it's still not clear how much China spent on fighting the pandemic, reports say that the Guangdong province alone spent over $22 billion. And this is while the government's revenue fell sharply. How? Let's start with the household incomes, which were dented by rolling lockdowns, and this led to less tax revenue for the local governments. And then there were tax breaks to support businesses during the pandemic. The housing market slump made matters worse. Sale of land, which usually makes for 40% of the revenue, has collapsed. When Beijing's financial sector was in a mess, the central government clearly said it will not come to the rescue. The Ministry of Finance said, if it's your baby, you should hold it yourself. Will Wuhan meet the same fate? What comes to your mind when I mention the Himalayas? Tall mountain peaks, valleys with white snow, lush green terrains. But what if you were told that huge piles of waste have made the Himalayas resemble a huge rubbish dump? Who is saying this and why? Our next report tells you.
Mountaineers have turned the Himalayas into a gigantic rubbish bin. This is not something that we are saying. These are the words of conservationists who are on a mission to clean up the mountain range. Of course, the fact that there is a need to clean up the Himalayas is alarming enough. What's more alarming is the extent of the problem. Footage was released from one such cleaning expedition, where team members can be seen trudging through heaps of waste, including plastic bottles, sanitation pads, and abandoned tents. Around 45% of this waste was plastic waste. The waste, according to observers, is a byproduct of what is known as the expedition culture. The very culture that promotes mountaineering-related activities and include activities like traditional outdoor climbing, skiing, and traversing. Further, these activities give travelers a basic understanding of the culture, customs, behavior and etiquettes of a particular country or region. There is a rise in the expedition trend, which is now having a detrimental impact on those living in and around the mountains. This time alone, this mission cleared out 3.7 tons of waste off Makalu and Annapurna. Makalu is the world's 5th highest mountain summit, and Annapurna is the 10th highest. There are several such missions across the globe, and their aim is to keep the Himalayas clean. If these conservationists are to be believed, the situation is appalling. They say one can find lots of oxygen bottles, tins, canvas and shoes behind the rocks. And an increasing amount of garbage is particularly piling up at Mount Everest. Mount Everest is located in the Mahalangur Himalayas. It is the highest mountain peak in the world and hence it attracts the highest number of climbers. Nearly 600 people climb the Everest every year. So one can only imagine the amount of waste that is dumped in the Himalayas. Multiple attempts are being made to get this situation under control. One that grabbed worldwide attention was Nepal's garbage deposit scheme in 2014. Nepalese authorities introduced a law which required climbers to leave a garbage deposit prior to their ascents. The fee was 528,000 Nepalese rupees or 3,028 pounds for Mount Everest and 396,300 Nepalese rupees or 2,428 pounds for other summits higher than 26,250 feet. According to this scheme, if climbers bring down the 8 kg of waste they produce, the money is refunded. However, critics have argued that the scheme is ineffective and it has not accomplished the desired objectives in waste management. The primary reason of this failure is believed to be a low level of acceptance among stakeholders and of government support too. The issue of pollution in the Himalayas is becoming so severe that it was featured in a Netflix documentary called 14 Peaks, Nothing is Impossible in 2021. This documentary highlighted the need to clean every peak higher than 8,000 meters and helped raise awareness about the issue of pollution in the Himalayas. In fact, amid the mounting of problems that Himalayas are facing, human feces is adding to the waste too. Climbers are also throwing waste into glaciers, and it is believed that this waste would re-emerge from the glaciers in 200 years, thus putting our present and future both at stake. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Our next story is from Japan. It involves the Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and his son. The Prime Minister has said that he will be removing his son from the position of his executive secretary. In other words, he has sacked his son. But the question here is why? And the answer dates back to December 2022. On the 30th of December, a private party was held at the official residence of the Prime Minister. The pictures from the party were released in a weekly magazine, and since then, public outrage has only been mounting. What exactly did these pictures show? They showed the guests posing on red carpeted stairs. Well, that does not sound problematic, does it? So why was there such public outrage? What was the exact reason? Well, these pictures imitated the new appointments. And guess who was standing at the center of the picture? It was younger Kishida. Shotaro Kishida stood at the center, the position reserved for the Prime Minister. In fact, other photographs showed guests standing at a podium as if holding a news conference. And that is what the outrage is all about. The opposition strongly reacted to these photographs. Seiji Osaka, a senior legislator with Japan's largest opposition party, the Constitutional Democratic Party of Japan, believes that the dismissal should have come earlier. He said, and I'm quoting, "This is too late. I suspect Kishida appointed someone who is not capable of being the Prime Minister's aide to the post." And responding to the outrage, Prime Minister Kishida said his behavior at a public space was inappropriate as someone who is in an official position as a political aide. I have decided to replace him for accountability. Not just that, Kishida also acknowledged that he had briefly greeted the guests, but did not stay at the dinner party. Further, he said he severely reprimanded his son for the event, but failed to quell the ongoing criticism coming in from the opposition legislators, also the public outrage. And this, by the way, is not the first time that Kishida's son has come under fire for making use of his official position for private activities. He was also reprimanded for using embassy cars for private sightseeing in Britain and Paris. He was also scrutinized for buying souvenirs for cabinet members at a luxury departmental store in London. All of this while he accompanied his father on trips. Shotaro Kishida was previously his father's private secretary, and he was then appointed as the policy secretary, which was one of the 8 secretary posts for the Prime Minister. And the appointment was seen as a step in grooming him as his heir, and was criticized as nepotism, which, by the way, is said to be common in Japanese politics. I now have a question for you. How often do you wash your clothes? I know this sounds like a bizarre question, but hear me out. It's generally believed that designer wear outfits for special occasions are better off being sent off for dry cleaning. Comfort t-shirts, sweatpants might be thrown into the washer more often. But what if I told you that there are some who do not wash their clothes at all? Now, before you scrunch up your nose, let me introduce you to the no-wash and the low-wash believers. This movement is mostly led by denim enthusiasts. They want to maintain a swanky fade on their jeans, but sustainable fashion followers have also hopped on the trend, and denim manufacturer Hui Denim Company even has a club for it. It's called the No Wash Club. It says the longer you leave a new pair of jeans without washing them, the more beautiful it stays. In fact, the club challenges the customers to not wash their jeans for 6 months. Many do not even do it for a year or more. Now, we appreciate the dedication, but why this assault on others' nose? Even Levi's CEO follows this strategy, by the way. At an event in 2014, he announced that he had never washed his 501 Levi's jeans. Some say he has still not washed the pair, now over a decade old. Now, can you believe this? I couldn't either. But take a look at this website. It's for the Indigo Invitational Competition, the world's largest denim fading contest. Participants have to wear the same pair of jeans for a year. They try to fade their jeans in the most aesthetic ways possible. And you know what is key to doing that? Washing them once in a blue moon, if at all. More than 9 out of 10 competitors do not wash their trousers until they have worn them 150 or 200 times. You can only imagine the stink. One of the participants wore his jeans for 6 months straight. He admitted that others could smell it in closed spaces like elevators. And when he met his future wife, the pair of jeans became a character in the relationship, as she too did not mind the smell. But mind you, jeans wearers are not the only people cutting back on laundry. Designers like Stella McCartney are also doing this. In 2019, McCartney made headlines. She detailed her low clothes cleaning habits. In fact, others rethink their washing habits due to environmental concerns or rising electricity costs. You can take the clothing brand Wool and, for example, the founder, Mac Bishop, turned his focus to convenience and minimalism. And guess what? It resonated pretty well with the consumers, particularly those who already dislike doing laundry. And today, the brand sells thousands of merino wool dresses through a challenge of wearing them for 100 days. Sustainable fashion experts also agree to some extent. They say that washing your clothes too often takes a toll on their durability. Garments can end up tearing up, shrinking, losing their color. And this also affects the environment, of course, as microfibers from household laundry end up in marine animals. And while they advise washing clothes less frequently, they are not on board with a complete washing machine's pause. Now the question is, How do no-wash advocates clean their clothes? Is hygiene a foreign concept for them? Well, they do this in their own way. They expose their garments to UV rays, leave them out in the sun. Some air their clothes overnight. Others use vodka or vinegar to get rid of the stench. And while it's unclear if they can save the planet by doing this, they for sure are saving up on their laundry supplies. Japan has been in the news today. A Japanese court has ruled that not allowing same-sex marriage is unconstitutional and a violation of human rights. And this decision was hailed by activists and is being seen as a step towards marriage equality. But over the last 24 hours, another country has been in the news for a reason quite the opposite. Our next report telling you more.
The president of Uganda, Yoweri Museveni, is dominating global headlines. He has signed into law one of the world's harshest anti-homosexuality measures. The Anti-Homosexuality Bill 2023 was among 6 pieces of legislation that the president signed into law. The move has triggered condemnation from human rights activists, LGBTQ groups and the international community. Before we tell you about the reactions, let's just tell you how things reached this point. Earlier this month, lawmakers passed a new draft of the legislation. What did the amended version say? That identifying as gay would not be criminalized, but engaging in acts of homosexuality would be an offense punishable with life imprisonment. Repeat offenders could be sentenced to death, though Uganda has not carried out capital punishment for several years. Reactions have been pouring in ever since the president signed the measures into law. A rights group has announced that it had filed a legal challenge with Uganda's High Court, calling the legislation blatantly unconstitutional. Activists say by criminalizing consensual same-sex activity among adults, it goes against key provisions of the Constitution, including rights on equality and non-discrimination. Not just that, the move also risks undermining progress in combating HIV/AIDS in Uganda. Meanwhile, there have been warnings from around the world. The international community is watching the developments very closely. The United Nations Human Rights Office has called it a recipe for systematic violations of the rights of LGBT people and the wider population. The EU Foreign Policy Chief, Joseph Borrell, has said that Ugandan government had an obligation to protect all of its citizens and uphold their basic rights, and that failure to do so will undermine relationships with international partners. US President Joe Biden wants the measures to be repealed immediately and has threatened to cut aid and investment in the East African country. He said the administration would also consider sanctions against Uganda and the restriction of entry into the United States of people engaging in human rights abuses or corruption there. Interestingly, Britain, the former colonial power in Uganda, which criminalized homosexuality during its rule, has said it was appalled and called the law deeply discriminatory. There are serious concerns about the risk of violence, discrimination and persecution and the impact on the fight against HIV/AIDS. The law has been called deeply regressive and a grave assault on human rights. But in Uganda, the legislation has broad public support. It is a majority Christian country that has pursued some of the toughest anti-gay legislations in Africa, where around 30 nations ban homosexuality. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
The cricketing fraternity calling him Captain Cool. Fans chant his name as Mahi. You guessed it right, we are talking about the cricket legend, Mahendra Singh Dhoni. Dhoni led his IPL team to its 5th title this year. The cricket community thought he would announce his retirement after the final, but his speech left fans awestruck. The cricketer said that he is not done yet, saying that he will not take the easy way out by retiring. Now that's the reason he is called a legend. And tonight, we want to talk about what makes this man magical. How does he make crowds go wild? Mahendra Singh Dhoni, the only man to lead his side to victory at the ODI World Cup, the T20 World Cup and the ICC Champions Trophy. But these are accolades in the world of cricket. Mahendra Singh Dhoni has also been awarded the Padma Bhushan, one of India's highest civilian awards. Dhoni breaks the notion that only people from well-off families flourish. Born in the state of Jharkhand, Dhoni was raised in a middle-class family. His only connection with cricket was that his father played for the state team. His mother was a homemaker. Although Dhoni was a great athlete, he only preferred badminton and football while in school, and he accidentally became a wicket keeper when his football coach pushed him to join a local cricket club. And this is when Dhoni started to take the sport seriously. And there was no looking back. The legend entered international cricket in 2004. In 2005, he made his Test debut. Dhoni was made captain for the inaugural T20 World Cup in 2007. And he did not disappoint. He led the team to victory against Pakistan in the T20 final. And let's not forget, a match between India and Pakistan is one of the most watched cricket matches. He also became the ODI team captain in the year 2008. How did he lead his team to the several victories? Dhoni, you see, is regarded as one of the best wicket-keepers of his era. The skipper has outfoxed many batters with his quick glove work behind the stumps. This, of course, paired with his excellent calls for the decision review system, made players fear him on the field. The legend is one of the fastest in running between the wickets. Although the man is in his 40s, he runs like a 20-year-old on the field. Former Australian cricketer Matthew Hayden once said that Dhoni is a person who has really defied his age. Dhoni came up with the famous helicopter shot. And why is it called the helicopter shot? Because if executed effectively, the shot looks like the moving blade of a helicopter. The scoring shot works against Yorkers and even full-length deliveries. Dhoni is known for his calm and collected demeanor. Critics say this factor amplifies his leadership skills. The cricketer has not been involved in any heated arguments, which is a common phenomenon in cricket. Dhoni is also known for creating a peaceful environment in the dressing room. And cricket, by the way, is not Dhoni's only love. His love for bikes is well known among his fans. He has a huge collection of bikes at his farmhouse in Ranchi. The legend owns a Curtis motorcycle worth over $56,000, a Kawasaki bike which costs over $41,000, a Ducati bike worth over $30,000, and a Harley-Davidson motorcycle worth over $20,000. MS Dhoni also made headlines for his epic hairstyles. His long-haired look really reached the top of the list. The former president of Pakistan, Pervez Musharraf, in fact, praised his long hair after India won a match against Pakistan. He congratulated Dhoni on the team's victory and said that he looks good in long hair and should not get a haircut. If we want to tell you about all of Dhoni's achievements and struggles, we might need another hour perhaps. And that's why the Indian cinema industry made a 3-hour-long movie based on his life. The film earned over $48 million worldwide and won several awards. Dhoni's life, you see, is nothing less of a fascinating fairy tale. He has encouraged many to pursue their cricketing ambitions and dreams. Let's now tell you what else made news around the world. Time for Gravitas Global Headlines.
France has said that calming tensions in Kosovo is critical to larger European security. Serbia has put its army on the highest level of combat alert to restore stability after violence erupted. Amid the soaring tensions in Kosovo, European leaders have told the leaders of Kosovo and Serbia to ensure de-escalation. Denmark to triple its defense budget over the next decade. The country says it aims to raise defense spending by nearly $21.3 billion and aims to meet NATO's spending demand of 2% of GDP by 2030. South Korea's defense ministry has said the country has decided to step up defense cooperation with Australia. The two countries also agreed to hold working-level meetings to revise a memorandum of understanding signed in 2011 that aimed to enhance defense industry cooperation. North Korean state media KCNA has confirmed plans to launch its first military spy satellite in June for live monitoring of South Korean, Japanese and American military activities. At least 8 people were killed and 30 others injured after a bus fell into a gorge in Jammu and Kashmir in India. The bus was on its way to a temple town in Amritsar city in India's Punjab state when the incident happened. UK's Prime Minister Rishi Sunak will visit Washington next week. He will hold talks with President Joe Biden and discuss bilateral ties and military support to Ukraine. 4 bodies were pulled out from Italy's Lago Maggiore in the northern Lombardy region after a boat capsized in a storm. Firefighters said many people on the boat managed to save themselves by swimming to the shore. The eastern Canadian city of Halifax has declared a state of local emergency after a major wildfire caused evacuations and power outages in the region. The fire sent a huge plume of smoke over the port city. Roads were affected with smoke and flames, making driving hazardous. MS Dhoni has delayed his retirement from the IPL after guiding the Chennai Super Kings to a record-equaling 5th title. Chennai beat defending champions Gujarat Titans by 5 wickets in a rain-affected match in Ahmedabad. Miami Heat sealed their place in the NBA Finals after beating the Boston Celtics in the series decider. Miami completed a 103-84 point win in Game 7 to end the Celtics' comeback. Boston had won the last 3 games in the Eastern Conference Finals. Miami will now face the Denver Nuggets for the title.
On that note, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas tonight. We are leaving you with Gravitas images. Thanks very much for watching. Good night.
Se procedió a tomar muestras para el laboratorio en Santiago.